Good morning. I'm Dean Heskin, President and CEO of Swiss America Trading, and thank you for tuning into our podcast, The Secret War on Cash. We take an in-depth look at what's been happening in the financial markets and the economy. And if you weren't already aware, there really is indeed a war going on your cash, on my cash, on all of our cash. And to discuss this war with us today, I have my co-host, Chris Agelastos. Chris, top of the morning to you.
Good morning. I can't believe it. The year's flying, man. We're already like more than halfway through February.
Oh yeah, we are well over halfway, and that says a lot in February. As you may be aware, February tends to be a shorter month than most.
Yeah.
So we're getting to
it really feels like it.
The tail end of it. Okay, so let's talk about some money today. Right? Specifically in the realm of money, we're going to talk about gold. And I actually, in our electronic newsletter, covered this last week, but I wanted to cover it today as well, just because I think it's an interesting story. And let's start with the headline on it here. JPMorgan. In fact, by the way, those tuning in, if you have not subscribed for our complimentary e-newsletter, which you can get a daily version and a weekly version, please do so at SwissAmerica.com. We bring you just some nice little blips of some of the things that are taking place in the markets. But let's start with this. JPMorgan and other big banks are flying billions of dollars worth of gold on planes. Here's why. And what I found interesting about this is, I don't know why, and if it was just me, Chris, but when I read the headline on this, what instantly flashed into my head or my mind is the Old West, when I used to love watching, Westerns when I was a kid, and the Old West where you had those stagecoaches that were loaded full of gold that were making their trek to the country, or you had, the trains that were loaded full of gold that were doing the same, and then you had to contend with the bandits the train robbers, the bandits that knew that gold at some point was making its way across country and would steal it from you. And, and I'm probably reading a little too much into this, but like in modern day, we don't use rail or stagecoach. Maybe we're using jets, which is the reason. And really the modern day train robbers or bandits are the tariffs. And because that's what's prompting this is the tariffs. And tell us a little more about what is going on and why are they doing this, and does it make sense that they're doing it?
Yeah, well, it makes financial sense to them. A lot of this is because of the threat that Trump has made, President Trump, to impose tariffs on Europe. And, we've been hearing about this, obviously, for the last several weeks. But what happens, a lot of these banks and financial institutions, they store a good amount of their gold bullion, their reserves, in both U.S. and European, in this case London, bank vaults. And normally the price of metal, gold, is approximately the same between our two countries. But because of the threats of tariffs on Europe, that has caused a price dip over there by about $20 at the time of this article per ounce. So what that means is if you hold your gold in London, instead of holding it here in the US, it's now worth less money. So when you have to sell that gold in order to pay people back for these contracts that they use the metal to secure, you're going to get less money over there. So it costs them less to bring it over here to the U.S. where they can sell it for more money and a profit instead of a loss. And if these tariffs, these talks continue, or even if they go into place in Europe, then we could see continued price drops over there. So financially speaking, it makes sense to them to ship it over here. Interestingly, like you pointed out, they say the cheapest and the safest way is via commercial flights, which does seem kind of crazy that, along with my checked luggage, there could be, some boxes and pallets down there with metal,
Yeah. I'm afraid when I travel with my golf clubs to keep my
Right.
binder in the bag because some
Yeah.
TSA agent may take it. There,
Yeah.
I can't even imagine putting a crate full of gold together and throwing that on a commercial flight. But I
Right.
mean, I'm sure the security is a bit more rigid for the gold than it is my golf bag.
I I would imagine so.
Not my problem, and I'm sure it's also insured. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a kind of like everything else. It seems like in our country and our economy and our markets these days, it just
Hmm.
seems like everything's upside down on its head. It's like there's no end to the craziness of it all. All right,
That's for
well, so
sure.
that we'll continue to watch that. I mean, that's interesting. And then we had a little bit of pullback in gold last week.
Hmm.
And the next article here from Bloomberg, how gold holds near record as Trump tariff pledges fuel haven demand. And it's interesting because, like, there's a lot of reasons why you think, okay, we're going to see a little backing off here or what have you. But as soon as it even starts to look that way, there there's immediately something else happens, or there's a recovery or a
Yeah.
rebound. I'm referring to the metals market, and I think a lot of that has to do with number one, the uncertainty out there, because metals have always been a tremendous safe haven for centuries.
Hmm.
Number two, the buying pressure is coming from just so many different places. As we talk about like how they're yanking in the earlier article, yanking money out of gold, putting it on jets and sending it over here to avoid tariffs. We covered that in one of our podcasts just a few weeks ago, how what went from almost an immediate physical delivery of gold is now stretched into like several weeks. 4 weeks is last,
Weeks.
probably even more than that now.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's really just speaks to the intricacy of and how intertwined, I should say, things are in our economy as it relates to one piece doesn't move and it not affects something else. There's always something moving, and banks are buying, governments are buying, institutions are buying, individuals are buying. And again, there's just not a lot of this stuff out there when you get right down to it. So, I mean, I don't see even these little pullbacks as being anything of concern. Do you?
No, not at the moment. Obviously we have to keep our eye on it, but the pullback that they're talking about in this article already appears to be reversing itself at the beginning of this week. So that's how consistent the growth has been. This is going to mark now our seventh consecutive weekly climb for gold. So now, obviously, every day of the week, you're not going to just see an increase. There are going to be some days where it pulls back, but it's easy for it to shoot back up 30 or 40, $50 even in a day,
Right.
and bounce right back. And with the concerns over interest rates and inflation, obviously all of the tariff wars that we've been talking about and hearing about on the news, and then central bank buying, like you said. Let's say even if demand dips a little bit here in the U.S., but you got the Chinese central bank buying up, literal tons of gold, and then add to that all the ETFs, exchange traded funds, which are not as good, not the same thing as holding physical gold yourself, but it's a way for people to invest in the gold market, and they do have some backing. So for all this
Right.
money that pours into those funds, they need to use a portion of that money to actually buy physical gold and store it in a vault, so they have some backing. And so, like you said, you have all these different avenues that are pushing it up. So even when it has a little bit of a retreat, at least so far, so far this year, and most of last year, we've seen really really good growth. So there's no real solid signs pointing to that slowing down anytime soon.
Right. Well, and even with the pullback, the last I heard, and it's hard to keep up with because there've been so many, but we're only, I mean, this year is flying, yes, but we're a little over halfway through the month of February, and gold's
Hmm.
already hit 11 highs, I believe the number was for the year. I mean,
Yeah.
so it really, has been very aggressively moving and continuing to charge on. So, for
Yeah.
those tuning in, if you want to learn more about gold and how you yourself can get positioned in gold, albeit with maybe a retirement account, an old retirement account, your just personal savings or investments. There's a ton of ways you can do it. And if you haven't done it already, you should. Please feel free and contact our office at 1-800-289-2646. Or you can also visit us online at www.swissamerica, that's all one word, .com. You'll see that contact information in the description of the podcast. And if you're not subscribed to this podcast, please do so and follow us on social media. Thanks for tuning in. Chris, thank you for the information, and have a great rest of your day and great rest of your week, everyone.
Yep. Take care. Thank you.